Good day everyone. We are the group 2 presenter and we are going to tackle about the varieties and registers of spoken and written languages. Our objectives for today is to determine culturally appropriate terms, expression, and images, adapt cultural awareness and sensitivity in communication of ideas, and discuss the varieties of language and the distinction of register. So the linking of our world through global communications is nearly completed. Our world is now circled by superhighways of information. Our skies is loaded with satellites for broadcasting our communication. The observation of John Naisbitt in his book Megatrends 2000 says, the more homogeneous our lifestyle become, the more steadfastly we cling to deeper values, religions, language, art, and literature. As outer worlds grow more similar, we will increasingly treasure the traditions that spring from within. In some ways, we have been more and more globalized in our lifestyle. Businesses, factories, music, fashion, fast food, however, the inner elements, the fundamentals of language, philosophy, religion, and value system will remain diverse and varied. Speaking of a language, not only does diversity remain specifically in it, language varieties continues to exist. What is a variety? A variety refers to any variant of a language which can be sufficiently delimited from one another. It's either social, historical, spatial, or its combination. Language variety, a general term for any distinctive form of a language or linguistic expression. Various form of language which is triggered by social factors. A language variety refers to a distinguishable variant of language. This means that there are a large number of varieties of any given language. The sole criterion to be fulfilled by a particular variety is delimitation to other varieties. A dialect within a variety framework are frequently referred to as regional varieties. Spoken language and written language. Spoken language, the actual use of speech, sounds, or any related utterances that convey meaning to share thoughts or information, while the written language is the communication by means of written symbols or writing system. Varieties of language. There are five varieties of language, and these are the Pidgin, Creole, regional dialect, minority dialect, and indigenized varieties. The first one is the Pidgin. Pidgin is a new language which develops in a situation where speakers of different languages needs to communicate but do not share a common language. A lexifier is a particular language where the vocabulary of a pidgin comes from. Example is the Nigerian pidgin and Bislama spoken in Vanuatu. Pidgin, the pidgin comes from mainly in a particular language that is called the lexifier. So, an early pre-pidgin is quite restricted in use and variable is in structure, but the later stable pidgin develops its own grammatical rules which are quite different from those lexifier. And once a stable pidgin has emerged, it is generally learned as second language and used for communication among people who speak different languages. Other example is the Sea Island Creole, which is spoken in Carolina's Sea Islands. The next one is Creole. Creole is a pidgin that becomes the first language of a children and the mother tongue of a community. Example of it is Gala, and Patwa, which is Jamaican Creole, and a pidgin, which is the Hawaii Creole English. Creole is when children start to learn a pidgin as their first language and it becomes the mother tongue of the community. Like a pidgin, a Creole is a distinct language which has taken most of its vocabulary from another language. The lexifier but has its own unique grammatical rules. Unlike sa Pidgin, ang Creole is dili siya restricted nga gamiton and is like any other language in its full of range of functions. Other example of Creole here in the Philippines is Ternateño, which is spoken in the village of Ternate, Manila Bay, and here in Sambuangueño, which is spoken here in Zamboanga City. The next one is the regional dialect. It is not district language but a variety of language spoken in a particular area of a country. Example is Hillby English from Appalachians in USA, Geordie from the Newcastle upon Tyne in the UK. So the regional dialect, some of the regional dialect have been given traditional names which mark them out as being significantly different from standard varieties spoken in the same place. So some are example here in the Philippines is the Tagalog, Cebuano, Ilocano Hiligaynon, Bicolano, at Waray. The next one is the minority dialect. It is a variety used as a marker of identity, usually alongside a standard variety by the group members of a particular minority ethnic group. Example is the African American Vernacular English in USA, London Jamaican in Britain, and Aboriginal English in Australia. Some example here in the Philippines is the Cebuano, Tagalog, Ilocano, Malay, Maranao, Maguindanao, and many more minority dialect. The next one is the last variety of language, which is the indigenized variety. It is spoken mainly as second languages in ex-colonies with multilingual populations. An example of it is the Singlish, which is spoken in Singapore. Indigenized variety, the differences from the standard variety, may be linked to English proficiency or may be part of a range of varieties that is used to express identity. The differences between the oral and written varieties of the language. Oral or spoken variety, the spoken language is maintained in the form of dialogue. The spoken language has a considerable advantage over the written language as the human voice comes into play. This is a powerful means of modulating the utterance as all kinds of gesture together with the intonation give additional information, while the written variety is maintained in a form of monologue and has to seek means to compensate for what it lacks. Therefore, the written utterance will inevitably be more explanatory. And the oral is very every culture is developed and every child learns oral language of community with rare exception. It is learned with little explicit instruction and is primary vehicle for meeting basic needs, while the written language is not very culture develops, not very child learn. For most, written language must be learned through explicit instruction and it is not necessary to meet their basic needs. And that would be the end of my part. For more information, Ms. Tumampos will discuss something.
Every day, we always communicating and different people. It could be with our colleagues, family, siblings, and friends. But when we're communicating, did we consider the language register appropriate for the communication situation to engage in? Imagine that you are going to be introduced to the president. When you meet him, you will say something more formal, such as, "It is an honor to meet you, Mr. President." But when it comes to our friends, we could say it using the informal address, just like, "Hey dude." In every communication situation we encounter, we use a speech appropriate to the person to whom we are speaking and his or her context. The language that we use when we talk to our friends is not the language that we use when we meet somebody as important as the president. So, to start with, what is language registers? According to Nordquist 2018, a register is defined as the way a speaker uses language differently in different circumstances. It is determined by factors as social location, context, purpose, and audience. Determine the vocabulary structure and some grammar in one's writing and even in one's oral discourse. So, the level of formality and style of our speech or writings depend on the register. So always remember the different situations and people own a different registers. So there are 5 language registers. Each level has an appropriate use that is determined by different situations. So the first one is frozen registers, frozen in time, form, and context. It is extremely formal language that must be said the same each time we say it. For example, national anthem, the Lord's Prayer, the Holy Bible, the United States Constitutions, preamble of the Philippine Constitution. The second one is formal register. Used in formal setting in one way and nature, this use of language usually follows commonly accepted format. These include academic language, for examples, a TED Talk, a business presentation, the Encyclopedia Britannica, and Gray's Anatomy by Henry Gray, and announcements. The third one is consultative register, standard form of communications. Users engage in a mutually accept structures of communications. Formal and societal expectations accompany the users of this speech. Professional discourse or acceptable speech used in professional settings. For examples, doctor and patient, lawyer and client, lawyer and judge, counselor and client. The fourth one is casual register. Informal language used by peers and friends. Slang vulgarities and colloquialisms are normal during communication. Examples, buddies, teammates, group chats, message to friends, and blogs. Last one is intimate register. This communication is private, reserved for close family members or intimate people. For example, husband and wife.
Language registers are classified as number 1. Formal language register is more appropriate for professional writing and letters to a boss or a stranger. Is impersonal, meaning it is not written for a specific person and without emotion. Example, business letters, letters of complaint, some essays, reports, official speeches, announcement, and professional emails. Rules in formal writing. A. Do not use contractions. Cannot instead of can't, have not instead of haven't, is not instead of isn't. B. Spell out numbers less than 100. 19, 78, 26. C. Write in third person point of view. Avoid using the following I, we, you, and us. D. Avoid using too much passive verbs. Passive. The bone was eaten by the dog. Active. The dog ate the bone. E. Avoid using slang, idioms, exaggeration, or hyperboles and cliches. Awesome or cool, okay or okay, check it out. F. Avoid abbreviation and acronyms. National Aeronautics and Space Administration or NASA, Department of Education or DepEd, Influenza or flu, Philippine Pesos or PHP. G. Do not start sentences with words like and, so, but, and also. Here are some good transition words and phrases to use in formal writing. Nevertheless, additionally, however, in addition, as a result of, and although. H. Always write in complete sentences. I. Write longer, more complex sentences.
2. Informal language register. Informal writing is written in the way we talk to our friends and family. We use informal writing when we are writing to someone we know very well. Some kinds of writing can be written in an informal style. Informal writing includes A. Personal emails, B. Letters, C. Short notes, D. Phone text, E. Most blogs, and F. Diaries and journals. There are no major rules to informal writing. With informal writing, you can include things such as A. Slang and cliches, B. Figurative language, C. Symbols and abbreviations, D. Acronyms, E. Incomplete sentences, F. Short sentences, G. First person, second person, and third person, H. Paragraphs or no paragraphs, I. Jokes, J. Personal opinions, K. Extra punctuation, and L. Passive and active voice. 3. Neutral language register. We use the neutral language register for non-emotional topics and information. Neutral writing is not necessarily formal or informal. It is not usually positive or negative. A neutral register is used to deliver facts. Some writings are written in a neutral register. This means they are not specifically formal or informal. Writing in the neutral language register includes A. Reviews, B. Articles, C. Some letters, D. Some essays, and E. Technical writing.
Thank you for watching and listening.